Good morning, and welcome to episode 3 of Yanking Chains, our snarky multiport podcast with Maria, Vince, and Matt. Today we have a special guest that I'm going to let Maria introduce, who is a big runner and a big cyclist. We're excited to have him here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. I am super excited to welcome my husband, John Jenkins, to the podcast today. John has been a really important part in my development as an athlete, obviously not just as my husband, and he's the one that really taught me how to dream big, how to talk in the language of can instead of can't. I wanted to have him on our podcast to talk about his recent win at the Virginia Double Anvil, which is a double iron distance race. So that's 281.2 miles, kiddos. It's a 4.8-mile swim. It's a 224-mile bike done as 45 laps on an out-and-back course that's approximately 5 miles. There's a hairpin turn at each turnaround, so it definitely takes a lot of mental might to make it through that. And then it ends up with a 52.4-mile run on a slightly over 2-mile out-and-back course. So that's 26 laps for those of you counting at home. This was John's third go at the double distance. He's previously done the Florida Double Anvil twice. He did it once in 2014 with bronchitis, and he was the 5th place overall. He did it again last year in 2015 when he placed 2nd overall, and both he and the 1st place male broke the previous course record, which is pretty cool. He also broke the run course record with a blazing 8:11 run. That's amazing. He's currently ranked number 1 in the U.S. with the IUTA, which is the International Ultra Triathlon Association. But John's like a lot more than just a speedy athlete, and I think this is really why I wanted to have him on the podcast. Those of us that know him well know, much more about his incredible mental strength and his ability to stay positive and his relentless forward motion. People we know have called him the athlete whisperer. They've called him Phenomenon. And my favorite, which I made up during the Virginia Double Anvil, was Beast of the East. And obviously, he's a good friend and a wonderful husband. Like I said, I brought him on the show today to talk about his recent win, but not just because he won, although that is certainly incredible, but because he had probably the hardest moments he's ever had in racing. He was really at the edge like I've never seen him before, and I've crewed him through 100-milers, I've crewed him through previous doubles, and he brought himself to the edge, probably even like a little bit over the edge, but he clawed his way back to finish and also to win. So thanks for joining us today, John. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you. Wow.
You didn't know that I liked you, did you?
Not that much.
So I guess we could start, maybe if you just want to tell us maybe an overview of your day, or maybe how you approached the day at the race, and then we'll move from there. Did you get that, John?
John.
Going into, yeah.
Okay.
Not working?
Yeah.
Am I on there?
Yeah, you're on there
now. Okay. I think when you go into something so long, you have to kind of step back and not try to look at the whole day and just kind of break it down into little sections. So, for the swim, did out and back 12 times, and try to always get to that 60% mark. I find that once you get past 60% of it done, it's a little bit more easy to absorb in your mind. And the same thing with a bike, and just try not to think too far ahead in the day, and keep it in perspective where you're at that moment, not looking beyond that. It's kind of hard to do at first, but through patience and experience, you can kind of start to master it a little bit.
Okay, great. So that kind of answers the other question we had about like how you deal with so many laps, because I think you and I both having done the Florida one, the question I get the most about that is how do you deal with those laps? So your main thing there is kind of breaking it down. What about like pacing?
Pacing, I haven't used too much power in the double yet. I've been basically using heart rate because it's so long. And I didn't really have a good metric to.
Uh-oh.
Man. Where'd you go? We lost you, John.
John is pacing out the podcast.
It really is.
I'm not doing anything. I don't know. I see my voice showing up.
Yeah. Okay, you're back in now.
Okay. Uh, so pacing, like anything in any ultra, pacing is key. It's the most important thing. Being patient and not getting caught up in the little moments where, maybe someone passes you, or you feel like you have a little bit more energy than, and you want to accelerate. You got to kind of just whoa Nelly all day long, holding back the reins, knowing that the last 25 miles of 100 or the last 25 miles in a double Ironman are going to be extremely difficult. And if you're patient early, you can have less of a miserable day at the end. Because it just won't hurt as bad.
You want to talk about the miserable day part yet, or?
That's fine. I mean, that's fine. It doesn't. So I had GI shut down in the double. Am I on there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So my gut shut down, and I guess for a few days prior going into the race, I was very, very asleep. And to be perfectly honest about the whole thing, I just got complacent about the distance and kind of back for it. And I still paced on the bike, and I didn't.
Your connection is definitely not great, John. So,
yeah, maybe you need to move to another part of the room.
Yeah, maybe move to a different part of the room, John.
Are you by the window?
Yeah.
Move closer to the door.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And hold on, listeners. We're working it out here.
I'm trying to see if I can tone down the quality and all that stuff too.
Okay. Yeah. So while John's moving to a different spot, I'll just give the listeners some context. He had come in off the bike and started the run, and from the first lap, his gut was starting to give him issues. Obviously, as you can imagine, at the beginning of a double Ironman, at the beginning of a double Ironman with your gut shutting down, it's definitely a little stressful to have that experience. Here he is.
I'm in the corner now. Was any better?
We put Johnny in the corner.
We got to get him a dunce cap.
Does anybody
sound better?
Yeah, you do. I was just explaining to the listeners, John, how you came in off the bike and you started out on that first lap, and your gut was already starting to shut down. You were complaining of feeling hot. You were saying you couldn't breathe. So I was just filling him in on the context. But if you wanted to go back and just kind of talk about, you had started talking about the idea that you'd gone into this race a little complacent. I actually think that's a pretty good lesson. So if you don't mind, maybe going back to that, talk about that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, after you do a few of these things, you kind of get a little, I don't want to say cocky. I don't feel like I was cocky, but I felt like I could go do it. Even though I trained and everything, I didn't pay attention to all the little tiny details that I normally would going into a race that meant something to me. And I think in the end that all them little details add up to a better result or a better day or feeling better throughout the day. And I got complacent. I think it affected me, physically. Mentally, I was actually okay. I just couldn't deal with the physical things that were happening to me with hallucinating a little bit and falling asleep while I was running, and I just couldn't stay awake.
Good time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great.
You paid for that?
Yeah.
I think that happens, though. I mean, because you and I have both done like a lot of Ironman distance events, and I think what happens is, at least for me, it seems like, I went and I did my first 50-mile run, and I was like, okay, I got the hang of this, and then I went into my next one, and I have so much experience that you get a little complacent. You think, all right, I can maybe like take the training wheels off of this, then you realize, well, maybe I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot to that, and I guess there's times where you can, I don't know, take the training wheels off and kind of go for it, and just let it all hang out there. I think in a way that's kind of what I thought I was doing, and then immediately I couldn't ride my bike anymore, so to speak. Or I couldn't run, and I had to put them back on. And,
Yeah.
And it was humbling, because I just, in my head I was okay. I was conscious. I knew what was going on. I couldn't keep myself awake. I was literally seeing like tree branches in front of my head, and I'd be like ducking out of the way of it, and I know they're not there, and I just was having massive,
You saw brick walls too, right?
yeah, like on the outside of my headlight, I would see like walls. It was just a lack of nutrition at that point, and I need to sleep. So my body just forced me to go to sleep. So that's what I did. When I came in, I went and I took some little naps, and I was able to manage to get through a couple more loops and then take another nap. And finally, after enough sleep, I guess, my body started to feel a little bit better, and I had gotten some different nutrition in me, and I was able to hold it in, and it was like, magical stuff. I drank this magic potion, and all of a sudden I was like back to life, and I was able to find my run again, and finish the race out strong. But the middle part of that middle third of the run was just, it was the worst I've ever felt in a race yet, and I'm never going back there if I can avoid it.
Yeah. So knowing this story a little bit, I know that Maria was texting me. I think I was like laying on the floor watching TV with Christine, and all of a sudden I start getting these frantic texts. This is what's going on with John. What the fuck do I do? And so we were like going back and forth with this stuff, and I think you were leading the race for quite a bit of it, and then at some point I think you slipped into second place. So when did you slip into second? Is that like when you were really like deep in the bowels of your bowels?
It was, yeah, it was, because actually, to back up a little bit, on the bike, about an hour or two before we got off the bike, it rained really hard. It kind of broke loose. So it went from like a really warm day to
like hot even. It was
like hot to like really cold. And I think when we all got off the bike, especially me, because I didn't have a whole lot of time on the bike after it rained, all of our thermal regulation got a little bit mixed up, just as it normally would going from the bike to the run, and it kind of got a little exaggerated because of that being really hot, then getting really cold, and then it got hot again. And so I know I built up a lot of heat faster than I normally would, even though my effort was controlled. But being such a long day, I think it affected all of us. So the other guys were shutting down too. But to answer your question, it was probably pretty far into the run, believe it or not. I had them off the bike by, I think, 45 minutes or an hour. So I had a pretty good lead. I really wasn't worried about what place I was in until I couldn't hold it together anymore. Then it was more of survival mode, and the outcome of the race was just it was like a gift, because after I had the hallucinations, falling asleep, didn't feel good, puking, all the beautiful things that can come with an ultra. After that happened, I kind of just chalked it up with, well, I'm just going to finish this thing. No matter what I got to do, I'm going to finish it, and that was my goal at that point.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add so I crewed John for the race, and just to give the crew perspective here, he was pretty much in these dumps, if you will, from about 11 p.m. until about 7 a.m. So we're not talking like a few laps here. We're talking like the majority of the run. And when he came off the bike, the guy that was in second actually wound up third, and the guy that was in third off the bike actually wound up coming in second. So there was a lot of movement between the top three guys. I think they were all going through some really crappy moments. Like the guy that wound up in third place overall, he was actually gaining on John. So we thought he was going to overtake him, but he wound up having to go down for a 2.5-hour nap because he was just so crapped out. He was puking, the same sorts of things. And so it was, I would say, to answer your question, it was somewhere in the middle of the night that John dropped into second. But like he said, at that point, the crew, we were all like, we just have to keep him safe and get him to the finish line, because there was a part there, Vince, when I was texting you, I was trying to determine, is he medically unsafe right now? Do I have to, as the crew chief, do I have to pull the plug on this? And like John said, he was totally lucid. There was nothing wrong with him. He was able to talk to me. He was able to answer my questions. He was just falling asleep. He's just like literally he's walking into the crew area like stumbling. I'm like, maybe sit down. And at one point, he's like, I'm going to lay down. I'm like, oh, okay. So I turn around to go grab his chair. And as I turn around, he's laying down in the mud, curled up with the dog.
I remember seeing that picture. I think he tweeted it out. It's like John's is like totally out, man.
Yeah, that's when you need to sleep. You need to sleep, and I think starting that caffeine too early on the bike, I just caffeine crashed bad, and was one of the mistakes. And man, when them crashes come, they come hard. And I was looking into the woods, and it was all wet and rainy, and I was like, I could just crawl underneath that laurel bush right now and go to sleep. Like, no problem. I could, or lay down right in the road. That's how tired I was. I've never been like that. I never ever thought, oh, I'm going to go lay down right now in a race. Like, no way. But I got humbled, and I think that's what I needed at this point, in where I've been racing and training and coaching. I think it helps to have actually experienced this.
Yeah.
Well, I always walk away from those days, regardless of how they end up. I mean, it worked out. You got it back together and came back for the win. But I mean, I just always walk away with like so many lessons, and I think that's valuable to me because you have so many successes. I don't think you learn much from that, but when you fail, you learn a lot.
Yeah, definitely. There's always a lesson.
So you were talking about taking too much caffeine. I mean, I've done races where like I pretty much like there's caffeine in everything that I take in. And so are you talking about like, because I remember you mentioned something about 5-hour energy drink. So in addition to what's in the products, are you talking about starting caffeine too early, or are you just talking about no caffeine until a certain point?
No, I generally don't start caffeine until the second half of the run, and pretty much in doubles.
Okay.
So in Ironman, I like caffeine around 4 hours, maybe 4.5 hours in on the bike, mile 80, say, somewhere around there. And from that point on, I continue it in Ironman. And the double, being that you still have a double marathon after the 224-mile bike, it's so much longer that you need. Well, I mean, maybe some people can tolerate caffeine that long, but I can't. And I think it may be also, a combination of taking that caffeine in, along with a little bit harder effort on the bike, and then that thermal regulation change that happened with the rain, lack of sleep, all the different variables that I think combined to massive GI shutdown, stop. And it's not one thing. It's a combination of them all. But I can't take caffeine in for more than 6 hours. At least it starts to bother me after that.
Because I normally, from the moment I get out of the water and I'm on the bike, there's caffeine in everything from start to finish on Ironman. And then last year here, I was doing, the same thing. My bottles, everything in my nutrition had caffeine. And the first time I didn't have it was Tahoe. And then that was the first time that I actually noticed that I didn't have caffeine and was looking for it. But that was in the middle of the night when I started getting tired. But yeah, I normally am just from start to finish with some caffeine, and then in an Ironman, I might go looking for Coke at the end in addition to what's in my bottles. So I don't know. But then again, I'm the type of guy I can drink coffee and go to bed. So I don't know.
Yeah, I can't do that. I think there's a huge, let's face it, coffee or caffeine is one of the only legal stimulants that you can use. And if you use it as a stimulant at the end of a race or towards the last third of a race, it can really give you a boost, where if you use it all the time, I don't think that you get as much of a benefit from it.
No.
So if you can kind of cut it out of your life a little bit, yeah, and then
Vince is pissed. He's never.
He's coffee.
Can't tell not to drink coffee.
So I'm gonna have
Yeah.
my normal dose of caffeine throughout the day, and then those chocolate covered espresso beans are gonna be for the middle of it. And I want that.
Well,
dose.
it's a personal thing, you know what I mean? I'm not saying what works for you is for you, and anything, and you know, when you're going long, nutrition is personal, and it's not a general thing that you can just get, you know, throw out there and it works for everybody. It's definitely a personal
Oh
aspect.
yeah. No, it was just curious to me because you were talking about it yesterday, and I was just thinking, wow, I do caffeine, but I do caffeine all the time. I don't stop, and I know you guys like periodize your caffeine, or at least you were at one point. Maria was talking about, well, John quits alcohol and caffeine, and I'm like, fuck that.
Yeah, well, I mean, they were when I have big goals, you know, and
Yeah.
I think, you know, I remember talking to you about that, and not drinking, and you're like, drink if you want. I'm like, well, I think for me in my head at the time, I needed to go all in. For me to have the result that I wanted, I had to go all in, and that worked for me then. You know, now I'm a little bit more complacent again, but I'll, you know, I'm not as strict with maybe I can't have a beer here and there, and I'm enjoying, you know, training a little bit more, and it's not all just like, you know, boot camp and regimented, and
Yeah.
And I'm finding enjoyment in that, and I like that about the sport right now, where we're at.
What sort of?
I think that's what it is for me.
Go ahead, Vince.
I think that's part of it with me too, is like everything gets so strict in my life that like I gotta have something. I mean, you know, usually like the training, you know, the load is big, and so we, you know, our social life is gone, and you know, I get really strict on my diet as far as like food, but I gotta have something, you know, like I gotta have like the Saturday night cookie. I gotta have coffee. I gotta have my wine. I can't. I'm like, I'm not getting paid to do this like a pro or whatever. So I can't take it like that extra 5% or whatever it is. But I mean, I admire you for doing it. I'm like, screw that. I'm not doing it.
I haven't done it in a while. You know, that was like when I was trying to get to Kona. You know, that was like whatever I got to do to get to Kona. You know, and then after I got there, I was like, all right, now I can drink beer and have coffee whenever I want, and cookies on Saturday night. But just like, you know, you're talking about, I don't care as much. But
I just want everybody to know that I've been to Kona and I drink wine and drink coffee. You don't have to follow that shit.
Just as an add-on to that, though, I do think if you are on the edge of qualifying, the little sacrifices do add up. Just saying.
All right.
Some of us are not as naturally gifted as others.
Whatever. This is that same fucking conversation about like you don't understand. I want to be a competitor.
I suck worse than you. Yeah.
No. It's that I want to be. People telling me they don't think I understand about being competitive. Like I understand it.
Matt, ask your question. You got to
work hard.
So you mentioned being complacent. And besides having cookies on Saturday nights, what sort of things would you have, looking back over the past year or so of training, whatever you did leading up into this? What would you have changed? What would you have been less complacent on?
That's a good question. Sleep, probably number one. I used to be very disciplined with my sleep, and lately, in the last year, I've not focused on getting as much sleep.
How much do you sleep?
I like to sleep 8 hours if I can when I'm training heavily, you know, and more if I'm training heavy. But it's hard with, you know, obviously you only have so many hours in the week to work, you know, get dressed, feed yourself, all the little things we got to do, and then train. You know, sleep sometimes gets cut. But in knowing now, you know, sometimes I'm better off sleeping in than getting up and doing a workout, because I just get more benefit from that rest than I would from just slogging through an hour or two on the bike in the morning.
Or an hour-long podcast at 6 a.m., right?
Well, yeah. No, this is
It's really 9
I'm
a.m.
in rest season, so it doesn't matter.
For
I noticed
some
that
of you,
too.
it's
Like,
9 a.m.
Yes.
I noticed that as well. Like I used to take a nap every day, and that nap has disappeared because like work has filled that void, and I think you just need to make the time. Like I think you can find it. You just need to make it happen. And you know, for me, and I need to put that back in. I mean, work's going to be there. It's going to pile up no matter what. So you know, sneaking in that like 20-minute nap, I think that was really like helpful for me. And I think, you know, sleep, that's like magic because your body, you know, I mean, it's totally recharging when you're doing that, and if you're not getting like your full sleep, I think it impacts your training. You know, especially Matt getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do a podcast.
Well, someone said, a former coach of mine said to me one time when I was at the overload period of training and just couldn't get my heart rate up. Everything was going wrong. I felt horrible. And I'm like, what's going on? I mean, I'm like, I can't do anything. I suck right now. And it was getting close to the race, obviously. And it's like, sleep. Sleep equals speed. And it was just as simple as that email. And it made, what did I do? I just focused on getting sleep, you know, nailing the nutrition, all the little things. And next thing you know, you're recharged and ready to go.
We lost you for a second.
Are you back?
I said it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just feel like John's like in the conjugal visit room or something here. You know, it's like it looks just like all dark and gray, kind of like he's in a cell or
You guys
something.
told me to move closer to the door. I got to move around now. Too dark here?
He's sitting on the floor in our hotel room.
I could go in the bathroom.
I had to move out because we were getting too much feedback when we were both in the same room. That's why I'm in like the brick wall there.
It's in the lodge, you know, like where there's a big fireplace roaring or something. I don't know.
Yeah. John, stop moving around. Let's tune in.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, go back to prison, John.
Here you are. Here you are. You're back.
All right.
I think we can hear you.
Prison.
Okay.
Back
All right, back in prison.
So I have another question too. How about you, John?
Always was as a kid.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
John, you there?
What's that?
Okay, stop.
there you are.
Stop moving around. Just stay where you are.
Okay, real quick. So when did you start getting or becoming fast enough to? You mentioned just finishing this race in first place, which is impressive. At what point in your racing career were you able to just finish in first place? When were you fast enough to do that?
Ruh-roh.
Uh-oh.
That's.
Oh, there he is.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I know I finished in first place, so that was kind of a big day for me. That's only the second time that's ever happened to me in any race. The only other race that I finished in first place was in an ultra at Peaks Ultra in Vermont, and I technically got first place male, but I was beat by a female who won the race overall.
Yeah.
Wow. Shit.
Maria, yeah. But
Larissa
she also
Danny.
got Larissa Danny. She also got second place at
He's incredible.
Leadville or Western States last year. So.
Oh, so he had to add that in there because it's pride.
Yeah.
That sting you feel is pride.
But even she beat me on her worst day. She's awesome. But
yeah, she's incredible.
So I never fast. I work very hard. That's what I'll say. In order for me to go fast, I have to work very hard, and I don't. I'm not some just. I do put in a lot of work to maintain fitness and to try to go fast and be competitive. And but it's not like some, it's like Vince and Ray were talking about there. I want to be competitive. What do I got to do? And it's, well, you got to do everything you can do to go fast and or to be all around sleep, nutrition, the proper training and in proper intensities, heart rate, all the different metrics that come along with being successful. It wasn't just like overnight I woke up and was leading a race. You know, it's been an education of years of experience.
Yeah, and I see. Yeah, that's the key. Is like people jump in and they want like overnight success. I mean, you've been doing this. I mean, when did you do your first Ironman?
2010, Ironman Lake Placid.
And what were you doing before that? I know you've been a runner for a while too, right?
Yeah, I always run, and I did a lot of I rode in high school and college, and always I rode on the beach patrol when I was on Brigantine Beach Patrol. So I always kind of did something, you know. Then there were some years there where I like followed the Grateful Dead around and ate pizzas, and it didn't really do too much, and got a little bit big. So that was a different time too. But we don't really want to talk about that right now. I think
Those were the early days.
Maria's fast too, and she followed the Grateful Dead around. So the key is you got to follow a band around. That's the key.
It helps when you hallucinate during the ultra. You have experience before.
You're already like, oh, I've been here before. No big deal.
Oh, this is nothing. I can handle this.
Yes, like, you're hallucinating on the trail. Have you ever done mushrooms?
Yeah, but yeah, no, so always kind of did something, you know, and maintain, you know, even if it wasn't like super fitness, I'd always be hiking in the woods when I used to hunt and fish and just being outside as much as possible, surfing, skiing, all the different things.
I think the specific stuff like, you know, running and biking, you know, and then, you know, putting in the years of consistent training, you know, that leads into this. And so, well, I guess the next question is, so you got another double coming up. Are you going to go into that reserved, or are you going to kind of like retool, sharpen up, get faster, and maybe kind of go for it again?
Well, I'm going to go for it. But we're going to
have another podcast with John where John digs a deeper hole. Stay tuned.
No, hopefully not. That's not. I plan on recharging, just like you said, taking some time away from the disciplines of in and out everyday training, and I need that right now. I've done a lot this year, a couple hundreds, a couple doubles, and it's time to take a rest. And my body, except for tomorrow where I get to run 40 miles with Maria and you at Javelina, but after that, I promise I'm taking a rest. But no, I'm going to try to go for it. There's a couple guys, one guy in particular that's like definitely faster than me on his worst day, and he's doing the race. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'll do my best. That's all you can do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I would think, John, you're going to take what you learned from Virginia and apply it to Florida, right?
No, absolutely. What happened in Virginia is not going to happen again. I mean, hopefully it will. But as far as words.
Yeah.
I learned more in that race, even though the outcome was good. I learned more in that race than the races that I've had better races where it just was easy. I mean, I've never felt like not easy, but just like I can run, so I'm going to run, and I'm not going to stop running until I cross the finish line. And I couldn't run. It wasn't like I didn't want to. I wanted to run. I was trying to run. I just couldn't run. I was out of nutrition. I was dehydrated. My gut was hurting, you know, when you're dry heaving, and I just couldn't put it together. And I'm like, well, what do I do now? You know, and that's when it got to the point where I just had to go to sleep. So anyway, I'm not going to back up to that. I don't want that ever happen to me again. I'm going to do everything I can do to not let it happen to me again, and that means taking the steps through proper nutrition in training every day, using the same nutrition, not trying caffeine at 8 hours into a 12-hour bike. You know, unless you want to do that, then you got to practice it. But I didn't, and it bit me, and it hurt.
I've actually been practicing putting my stomach kind of in a sideways state because I wanna feed off the course more, and I want to carry less stuff, and so with that, I think, you're like, okay, well, I come into this aid station and they've got, a hummus, tortilla wrap or whatever, and that's like more calories at once than I would normally take, because I normally just kind of nurse bottles with liquid nutrition. And so I've been doing runs where, like, I stop at a store and I grab something and I intentionally, like, kind of put too much in, and then kind of like, okay, I know what this state feels like. I know that I don't feel good, but I'm still moving. It's the beginning of it, and then kind of like working through it. Like, okay, I can't take too much liquid in, but I need to take liquid in, and kind of working through that. And I seem to be kind of practicing that and just getting used to what that feels like. I mean, that's just me, because I've had issues, and trying to kind of convert over to the course food more. So we'll see. I'll let you know after tomorrow.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, while we're on the subject of talking about dealing with bad feelings and working through it, we actually have a question from Kelly Chang, and he had actually texted me this morning, and he wanted to know he wanted to ask you, when the wheels are coming off, at what point do you cross the line of being able to come back from it versus passing the point of no return? And he also was curious, how can you be objective enough to realize either way when it's happening? So he's kind of asking, like, what do you do? Like, how do you know when you're pushing to the edge, or if you've gone too far, and how do you try to recognize what's happening?
Well, okay. So I think there's kind of like two questions in there, but
Yeah, there is.
If it's about intensity, and the simple question or answer is slow down.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, slow down. That's the first thing there. So if it's like too hard and you're getting overwhelmed and everything's going off the rails, slow down.
Yeah.
And
all problems can be solved by slowing down.
Yeah. Slow down. Maybe eat something, drink something, depending on where you're at in your feed cycle. But first thing I would do is slow down, and do a self-assessment. And it's kind of a general question, depending on what race you're in or what you're doing. I like to do a toe-to-head evaluation about exactly the feelings that I'm feeling at the time. So, a lot of times I think in my head that it's, things are going horrible, I'm not doing good, I think I'm going to die, I feel horrible, oh my God. And then when you step back and you really are honest with yourself, like, okay, my legs are tired, and it's hard to breathe right now, and I'm a little hot, but I'm not dying, everything's fine, I can hold on to this. And then you kind of like, oh well, step back and be honest with yourself about the true feelings that you're feeling. And if it is overwhelming and you are feeling horrible and you truly feel like you're dying, then slow down or stop or take a break, or get more space in your hat. Take all the little preventative measures that the signals that your body's trying to tell you and relay you, and your mind. Sometimes the mind is telling you the right signals, and it all depends on the situation. But I like that. I think that toe-to-head evaluation is a pretty good tip or trick, along with just slowing down. Getting through I think when you do them too, you can get through them moments, especially if you are honest about what you're feeling and not letting your head take control of it off a little bit. I think there are things that I've worked on and I'm still working on. I haven't figured it all out, but that's when you get in them situations and you rally through them, and don't listen to the little demons that are on your shoulders telling you to stop and you can quit, and you don't have to do the last 20 miles, and eat the demons that are on your shoulders and don't listen to them, and keep fighting, keep grinding.
To Kelly's question, I don't think there is a point of no return. I mean, well, I think what happens is if you don't recognize the things that are coming up, then they start to accumulate, and then you get into this situation where there's so many things going on that, like, you can't pick it apart, for like an individual thing. But if you, like I was saying about, like, putting myself in a situation where like I do have too much food in my belly, if you're doing it intentionally and you're not under, the load of being 12 or how many hours into a race, you can kind of pick up on the symptoms of things. And then when you're in that situation in a race, you can kind of see things a little sooner than later. I think it's just practice. Matt and I have talked about this, where like you just got to put yourself in situations that are, as hard or harder if possible. I mean, it's going to be hard to put yourself in a situation that's harder than double Ironman, but you can, yeah. But I mean, for like an Ironman, you're not going to do an Ironman, on your weekend, to prep for an Ironman, but you certainly can go out there and do like an over distance swim and an over distance bike and pair that up with a run. And by the end of that, to really like develop some problems that you're going to see in a race, especially if if your nutrition's off, you do a 9-hour workout, you go do an hour and a half swim and, and a 7-hour bike, and, you start running off that, and you figure out that, the transition time between those two, you could be really lengthy into it. If you've got a nutrition problem, it's going to start showing up at the end. When you get on that run, you're going to know it. So then you go, all right, I got to retool this. I got to figure out what went wrong, and you can go back and you can do that again. I don't know how you do that for a double, John. Sorry. You're just screwed.
Really long weekends.
Yeah.
Weekends.
Can we go into that on how much, for at least I'm curious, how much are you
training? A lot of
experimentation.
I know he dialed back his swim volume, right, Maria?
Yeah, I think John, you're breaking up a little bit. So I'll just kind of fill in here until he joins us back in again. In terms of how much training you're doing leading up to a double, I think it kind of depends, like where you're at. Like, I did my first double last March. Well, my first and only at this point. But I was so focused on being able to handle that long of a bike that, I did a 12-hour trainer ride, and John has done that sort of stuff too. Now going into
That's no fun.
I know it's not any fun. It wasn't any fun. But I know, like, John did a lot of that going into Virginia as well. I would say, going into this third double, he was probably the most bike training he's ever done. He did that really long race down in North Carolina. It was
he did a
286
24-hour mountain bike, right?
Yeah. He didn't go full 24 hours. I think he did 17 hours, 18 hours, something like that. John, can you hear us? I don't know what's going on with his connection. Our hotel room must be the vortex. But yeah, he did a 286-mile ride as part of that 24-hour race. And there he is.
Yeah.
Hey, he's back.
I don't know what he got. Yeah, it would like kicked me off for a minute.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just trying to fill people. Okay, good. Why don't you pick up then? I'm sure people want to hear it from you, not from me.
Oh, yeah, I'm in here twice.
Oh.
Right on.
Yeah. Kicked me off again.
It's like the Matrix.
Yeah, there's a lot of Johns. Sorry, everybody listening to this.
Hey.
Traveling and doing podcasting is a little bit tricky. Hey!
Am I on here?
Sort of. Yeah.
Can you hear
I
us?
don't know what's going on.
Well, so
I hear you.
Okay,
Okay,
so
good.
for this one, I know you said you dialed down the swim, and I'm assuming you bike and run focused. Are you gonna focus more on 1 or 2 or 3, for the next one? And
All right.
There we go.
Yeah. I would definitely continue my swim. As I swim for double Ironman. My swim volume is about the same. I just don't find that if I go swim, 15,000 yards versus 20,000 yards, that my swim time changes that much.
Okay.
But the bike, I think I'm going to actually back down on the volume and up the intensity, because what's happening is I'm doing these long slogging rides that I don't feel like I'm getting a tremendous amount of benefit from at this point, where I might be better off doing a 6-hour Ironman intensity bike, or maybe even a little bit above that, for the double, that versus just going and doing a 12-hour ride at 180 watts or 170 watts, whatever. And as far as the run, it doesn't change a whole lot between Ironman and double. I don't find that much benefit after, if I run 50 miles a week or I run 70 miles a week or I run 100 miles a week, I haven't noticed a tremendous difference in the outcome in my races. I actually felt a little bit better when I ran a little less miles. I think after you run that distance enough, I mean, this isn't for everybody, and I'm just making general statements for me. Some people need to run that much. Maybe they need to run that much for their head, and maybe they need to run that much for their fitness. I don't know. But for me, I don't, I want to do as little amount of training to go as fast as I possibly can. And that's my goal, and this way you have the least amount of risk for injury, and you have the most amount of time for recovery. And there are things that I like, and I don't like injury. So that's what I would say about the double.
I think too, John, your experience in endurance sports is probably pretty important with that training strategy. The fact that you've done what now, 4, 5, 6 hundreds? How many hundreds have you done? I think I would know the answer to this.
5.
5. Yeah.
5.
So I think that and countless 50s, right? Like, I mean, and probably maybe 10 of those if you count the 50s you run in the doubles plus, some of the other ones you've done. Yeah. So I think that plays a role with your lower run volume too. But I think what John's saying about, once you have a certain base and you have a certain experience at a certain base, adding in some of that intensity again can really, I think, make a difference. Yeah.
Well,
we were just talking about that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, we were just talking about that where I feel like, I was saying I was actually thinking of doing a marathon and training for a marathon to sharpen up because, I know I can run 100 miles, and I know I don't need to train, running long, slow, 50 milers or 60 milers or whatever in preparation for that. And what I find, and we've talked about this with running for ultras, is I think there's a lot of benefit to doing like back-to-back hard runs. So to your point about how you would train, I would think maybe doing back-to-back hard Ironman bikes would probably be more beneficial to you because you can ride the 224 ridiculous miles.
The algebra.
I actually did that this year, Vince. I did do back-to-back centuries. Or I did like a couple. It was. I think there was some benefit there for sure. And most of them were outside and not on the trainer, so I did push a little bit more than maybe if I was just sitting on the trainer by myself. And it made it a little bit more enjoyable as far as being on your bike for 12 to 15 hours over the weekend. It can get old after like one weekend. So it's hard to stay engaged.
For me, there seems to be, at least at this point in my athletic career, there seems to be more benefit to doing, slightly faster back-to-back stuff. But then we were talking about, Maria was saying yesterday about how she, she's not as fast as she was, and that's kind of the other point to me, like maybe thinking about doing a marathon, is that I think I actually need to even come back to that distance and sharpen up again. It was something that I was doing in Ironman. So at the end of the season, I would always run like a late season marathon so that I could sharpen back up. And then, because you're just going to slow down training for an Ironman. I mean, you're not going to slow down significantly, but when you start training for 100, you start slowing down a lot.
You really do.
Like I run a 9-minute mile, and I'm like, woo, running a 9-minute mile, which, is fast for some people, but, for a guy who's got a sub 3-hour marathon, it's not that fast. So I think, and I'm just trying to figure it out like everybody else, but I think I'm going to sharpen up if I don't get into the States.
Yeah.
If I get into States, then I will continue.
Yeah, if I get into States through running a marathon, I'm just quitting my job. I'm going to train for States.
I will love my 14-minute miles if I get into States. It's fine.
What was that?
I will love my 14-minute miles if I get into States. It's totally fine.
I think you can. Am I there?
Yep, you're here.
Oh, okay. it's all a matter of, like you said, if you want to run fast, then run fast. I like both. I like kind of mixing it up and then taking it in like little chunks. Like I'm going to train for this distance, for 6 months, and then train for Ironman for the next, and it kind of like breaks it up and breaks up the intensity. And I didn't do a lot of back-to-back long runs. I'll be honest. I tried them, and that didn't work for me so much. But I did do some, my long runs as we all do that training for ultras. But I didn't respond too well from back-to-backs. Or let me just say, I didn't feel like when I did do them that it made any big difference, except for me, over fatiguing my muscles and being closer to injury. But that's for me. Again, it's another personal thing, and not everyone responds the same.
Great. Do you want to ask some of these? We have some questions here that are non-racing. We're going up to the end of our time too, so real quick, we have some
fun questions.
Some fun questions.
Where are those?
Where are those?
Yeah, where are those questions?
In the doc.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were getting them from our listeners. Or something.
I don't know if I have any more. Maria was monitoring.
No, I am monitoring. I don't. Only Kelly's question.
Only Kelly. That's okay.
And we thank you, Kelly, for your question.
Thank you, Kelly. So one of mine is. I'm smiling. It's not that funny. But what are you running from? Did you always run, or what are you? What are you running away from?
Maria.
All right, we'll move on from that.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I find a lot of. I used to scuba dive, and when I used to scuba dive, people would say, well, like, why do you scuba dive? And I'd say, well, when you get down, to the bottom of the ocean and you're looking around at a wreck or a reef or whatever you're looking at, and there's no ringing phones, and there's no way for anybody to get a hold of you, and it's just you and your breath. And I have a little problem with my ears now, and I can't do that anymore, but I can still run, and it's the same thing when you're out running and you're in the woods or where you're at. It's just you and your breath, and there's no ringing phones unless you have your phone with you, which you shouldn't bring. It's just you and yourself, and that's what I enjoy most about that time with you and yourself, and or in your own head, and your breath. And that's what I enjoy about it. And that's what I'm running to, maybe not from.
I like that. That's a great answer. Do you have any favorite food indulgences that you splurge on? Pizza?
Pizza. I like pizza. I could probably just, go into competitive eating and just eat pizza and
I killed the rest of my pizza when I got back to the room last night.
It's good.
We're sitting at the table last night, and I was looking at that pizza. I'm like, oh, that pizza's huge. And I ate 2/3 of it or whatever, and I got back to it. I just kept going and going and going. It's gone.
I think I'm going to have for breakfast.
So we also heard last week that you have chickens, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Do you eat your chickens or just steal their eggs?
Oh.
I just steal their eggs. I haven't eaten chicken since after Kona 2012 was the last time I ate meat in November. Other than I'd have had some fish. I do eat fish occasionally, but very, very rarely. I'm kind of just going with a plant-based diet right now. That's been working pretty good, and I like it.
Good. Mm-hmm. Good to hear. All right. Any other questions, guys?
Not for me.
All right. Thanks, John. I wish we had a round of applause. Do you have any sound effects, Maria?
Yes, of course.
There you go. The crowd goes wild. All right. On that note. Well, good luck. You guys race tomorrow? You guys race tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Javelina 100 tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll have to have our next one will have to be about the race report.
Okay.
Good luck, guys.
So for everyone out there, our next one will be coming out. Our next podcast will be coming out in 2 weeks. same time, same place. We do these Friday mornings at 6 a.m. That'll be
9 a.m. Eastern.
9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. And good luck tomorrow, you two.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
we
so
will
much.
see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.